Okay, all I'm going to say about geometric means here, those two words, you know what they mean. The word mean you used in grade 8. It's kind of like average. In grade 8, you looked at the arithmetic mean. The arithmetic mean, you probably learned, if you learned it by sort of a recipe approach, add all the numbers together and divide by how many numbers there are. If you only have two numbers, like 10 and 40, the arithmetic mean in between there, what's the arithmetic mean? What's the average of two numbers? What's the average of those two numbers? What's the arithmetic mean? How much? Speak up. 25. Halfway in between, right? If so what you learned in grade 8 was if you want the average of two numbers, what do you do with the numbers? Add them together. Divide by 2. Oh, look, it's 25. This is why you should learn things from a understanding point of view rather than a memorizing the method point of view. You probably memorize this method till you're an old man or woman, but maybe you don't understand what it is, right? The mean is kind of, where's the middle, right? This is the middle if you're talking arithmetically. If something is growing arithmetically or changing arithmetically, that's the middle. That's not what we're talking about here. We're not talking about arithmetic means. We're not talking about halfway when you're adding. We're talking about halfway or the middle when you're multiplying. This is kind of like the middle when multiplying. Let's use that same set of numbers. So let me create some more space here. Perhaps. That didn't work. Let's create some space up above. If you're looking at the middle of these when you're multiplying, you're saying, what do I have to go in between there so that I'm multiplying? Before it was adding, right? This was adding 15, adding 15. This is the same distance away from there. This is the middle arithmetically. We want now what's happening if we're multiplying. In other words, we're creating a geometric sequence here. Geometric sequence. What number goes in the middle so that you're creating a geometric sequence? What is it? 20, right? For this one, you can see what it is. It's 20. There's actually two answers here. Remember when you learned about solving quadratic equations? And somebody said, what if x squared's 9? What's x? And you said 3. And your teacher said, oh, no, wait. It's not just 3. What is it? It's plus or minus 3. Aha. I'm sure they didn't say it like that. And you should have said, you probably said, oh, yeah, I forgot. What you should have said is, okay, you give me a real life example of where you're actually looking at the negative number, Mr. or Miss Smarty Pants, because it's not very often that you have a negative, but it's true. If you're solving this equation, there's a plus or minus, right? It's the same thing here, plus or minus. It's not very often you're actually going to have a real example in real life that the negative matters, but technically there's two answers there. Because the sequence could go 10, 20, 40, in which case you'd be multiplying by what? 2. Or it could go 10, negative 20, 40, in which case the ratio is negative 2. It's not, don't get me wrong here, it's not always, because when you're in grade 10 or whenever you learn about solving that, I think a lot of you over-applied the rule, and when you solve this kind of equation, you said, oh, it's plus or minus 3. It's not plus or minus 3 here, it's just 3, right? You don't over-apply that rule. You can put a couple of geometric means between numbers, and that's what we've got down here. I'm actually going to do a question on here. Where do I have it here? You can put more than one geometric mean. It just means more than one number. I think to teach you how to do this, all I have to do is say, if you're putting 3 geometric means between some numbers, you're doing this. If you're putting 3 geometric means, you're putting 3 numbers in there so that that's a geometric sequence. That's all you need to know. You guys are bright enough to be able to tell me, can these be plus or minus? And should I put plus or minus next to all of these? And if the answer was yes, would I ask that question? If the ratio was positive, what would these be? This is positive, this is positive. If the ratio is positive, what's going to happen with those numbers? They're all positive, right? If the ratio was negative, would all of these be negative numbers? No, which ones would be negative numbers? The which one? This one could be negative, right? If the ratio was negative, it would go positive, negative, positive, negative, right? So these ones could be plus or minus, but not the middle one. Notice that up here, right? This goes positive, plus or minus, positive, plus or minus, because when you put 3 in the middle there, some of them can be negative. Now I should have put plus or minus here. I really don't think you need anything else to be able to do this. It's not a big topic. It's one page in there. It's just putting numbers in between. If you know that geometric means are making numbers that form a geometric sequence, I think you're good. Is there any questions about that? I don't necessarily want to get into this, but I'm going to do a 30-second look here. You can do it without my help commercial, okay? Because it's true. You can get started on this section all by yourself. Look at this nice stuff that I wrote out. You realize how carefully I thought about this wording so that you would that you'd be able to do this on your own? You know, you see this? This isn't just, this doesn't just happen. This is careful thought, right? I'm not saying it's perfect, but I had to think carefully about this. I didn't have to think carefully about this because although I'd love to take credit for this, I did not invent these formulas. These have been around for a long time. In the past, all I'm going to tell you is, in the past when I'm teaching this sometimes, because I like you to understand where things come from, I went through where these formulas came from. And your eyes are looking glazed over, some of you. I don't think we have much to gain by seeing where these come from at this point, because I think what it does is it gets you to the point of saying, I don't get any of that stuff you were talking about geometric series. All that SN, A, R, N, I was totally lost. For now, what we're going to say is, here's a couple of formulas. I'd rather that you understand the difference between this and Tn. If you read this, it says what it is, okay? It tells you what Sn is. If you know the difference between Sn and Tn, you can use these formulas and you can understand everything here. Okay, if you read that, I know we're in the world where people are reading text less and less, and they like icons and flashing things and everything. There's no flashing things here. You got to read it. Notice that the question says determine the sum of the first 7 terms of the sequence. That's my other hint. The key word here being sum. If this question was in the first thing, because I know that by now you've developed your habits, and when you're presented with a math question that says determine the sum of 3, 6, 12, what you hear or what you read is blah, 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 3, 6, 12, right? Math students, you're very good. It's not because you're dumb. It's because you're smart and you're efficient and you know to zero in on what's important. And you've learned in math the numbers are important. Don't skip the words. You know, there's a Far Side cartoon that's like that. I don't know if you've seen it. If you know the Far Side, that cartoon? There's one that says, what people say to dogs. I know what you're thinking. I'm not comparing it to dogs here. It says, no, Rover, blah, blah, blah. No, Rover, you've done this 7 times now, I've told you. But what dogs here is Rover. Rover, all they hear is their name. All math students look at sometimes as the numbers. Okay? Don't forget to read the words. They're important. Can you get started? I know some of you are in each of those places. Wherever you are now, move forward in the next few minutes, okay? If you, at the very least, get section 10.1 done, that's a good start. But if you're at the point of starting looking at section 10.2, I'd like you to make a start on that.